Here, and welcome to tonight's webinar. My name is Melanie McKinney, Special Events Coordinator for Can-Do Multiple Sclerosis. Thank you for acting on the belief that you are more than your MS by attending tonight's webinar, New Year's Resolutions, Motivation to Exercise, presented by Dr. David Engstrom, psychologist, and Sue Kushner, physical therapist. Can-Do MS is an innovative provider of lifestyle empowerment programs for people living with MS and their support partners. We empower people to move beyond their MS by giving them the knowledge, skills, tools, and confidence to adopt healthy lifestyle behaviors, actively co-manage their disease, and live their best lives. Please visit the Can-Do MS website, www.mscando.org, where you can register for upcoming webinars and view archived webinars. You can check out our Can-Do MS lifestyle empowerment programs, including our Can-Do, Take Charge, Jumpstart, and Jumpstart in Motion programs. You can share your Can-Do promise, and you can learn ways you can contribute to or get involved with Can-Do MS. And a few items before we get started this evening. Questions and comments will be addressed at the end of the presentation. We will answer as many questions as time allows. You can post your question by typing in the chat feature, which is located on the left of your computer screen. To submit a question, type in the small box that says Chat with Presenters. And you can listen to the live webinar through your computer speakers rather than having to call in. This presentation is being recorded, and it will be archived on Can-Do MS's website. All of our webinars are archived there, and you can view them again at any time. You can also view the webinar schedule and register for upcoming webinars. And for those of you who are attending live tonight, you'll receive an email with copies of tonight's PowerPoint presentation. And please also take some time to complete the evaluation at the end of the webinar. We value everyone's feedback. And let's tell you a little bit about our presenters this evening. We have two wonderful speakers with us. David Engstrom is a clinical health psychologist with over 25 years of experience working with people with MS, and he has served as psychologist for our Can-Do program for many of those years. Dr. Engstrom received his A.B. degree in psychology from the George Washington University and earned his Ph.D. from the University of Southern California. He served his internship at L.A. County U.S.C. Medical Center and was on faculty at the University of California, Irvine Medical School. Board certified in clinical psychology, Dr. Engstrom has authored many publications in health psychology and has an active schedule of public speaking. In addition to his passion for helping people with chronic illness and weight management, his other primary interests are motivational coaching as well as stress and pain management. And Sue Kushner has been a physical therapist for 28 years. She graduated from the University of Pittsburgh and from the Physical Therapy School at Columbia University. She is currently finishing her Ph.D. in exercise physiology at the University of Pittsburgh. Sue has been with the Can-Do MS program for approximately 23 years, and she's been on the faculty at Slippery Rock University in the Graduate School of Physical Therapy. She works clinically doing home care PT. Sue has also volunteered with the National MS Society, both at the local and national level. This includes committee work, volunteer speaking, treating patients, writing, and editing. In 2006, Sue was awarded Volunteer of the Year by the NMSS. She is on the editorial board for Momentum magazine, the client publication of the National MS Society. And before we get started on tonight's presentation, let's learn a little bit about you. I just put a survey up on the screen. If you could take a moment and click if you're a person living with MS, support partner, and so on. Oh, looks like we have an overwhelming number of people with MS and some healthcare professionals, so that's fantastic. And with that, I will turn the presentation over to Dave and to Sue.
Well, thank you very much, and welcome to this presentation. I hope you gained some things out of it. We're going to go over some very basic issues with staying motivated. And I think one of the hardest things for all of us is to stay motivated about exercise. So with that, we'll go with this presentation. I did send out a handout, which you might have printed out. I hope you did. If you did not for some reason, you can always go back to the archive or to the center and get that handout later on. We're going to be going over that as we go over the slides. Well, I always have to put one cartoon in, and I've always liked this one. It says, the handle of your recliner does not qualify as an exercise machine, And I'm sure we've all been there. You know, a lot of people think that simple things that they do qualify for exercise. And I think as you'll learn from Sue tonight, there are a lot of areas that we all need to look at regarding full exercise. Just a little bit about motivation. We all get motivation from 3 different sources. The weakest kind of motivation is what we call external motivation. That's when your doctor tells you you need to exercise to lower your blood pressure. Or when your spouse tells you you're getting too fat, you need to go exercise. Generally, external sources of motivation don't last very long. They usually go away pretty quickly, as I'm sure you can understand. Identified motivation is a lot stronger, and that's the kind that I sort of call the health club effect. You know, there are some people that love to go to gyms and health clubs because they are around other people. And if you ever go to one of our long programs, one of the can-do programs, you're going to meet a lot of other people, and you learn to identify with what they're doing. You want to be like them. That's a pretty powerful source of motivation. The most powerful source is obviously intrinsic motivation. That's the kind where you want to do it because it's a challenge, because it's fun, because you've internalized it in a lot of ways. So I want you to think about your sources of motivation as we go through these slides.
Dave, sorry to interrupt. Do you mind speaking up just a little bit? I think we have some people in the audience that are having some trouble hearing you.
Is
Great,
that
thank
better?
you.
Yep. So how many times have you set a goal for yourself and never even started? I don't want you to count them, but just think back over your life. How many times your goal has been set and you never even get going? Or how many times have you set that goal, maybe working out, started up, and then not followed through with your plans? Don't you think that's the reason a lot of us don't set New Year's resolutions, must pass about 35 years old? Most of us stop making New Year's resolutions about that time. And it's probably because we set goals in various ways that make them hard to achieve. And I want to talk just about a couple of those goals tonight. First of all, when we set a goal, we sometimes set it too big. For instance, I'm going to run the New York City Marathon next November. Now, that might be laudable, but at the same time, it's pretty big. And we freak out when we think about that coming up. Sometimes our goals are too complicated. I'm going to lose 30 pounds, get a new job, develop a new relationship, right? We have all these different things that we're looking at changing, and none of them work out. The third is because sometimes we set goals that are very vague and not specific. For instance, I'm going to feel better about myself. Well, that's great, but what does that mean? It's so vague that it's really hard to get your hands around. And lastly, our goals sometimes are hard to achieve because we don't make them in a time-based way. We don't set goals according to time in our lives. So we're going to talk about that a little bit later. So what I want you to do tonight is begin to think about what primary area of wellness you'd like to accomplish the most in. And I'm giving you some choices here. The first, obviously, because of the topic of our talk tonight, is exercise. Think about your level of exercise. Is that an area where you need the most help? Or perhaps it's diet, or adherence to medication, or stress management, or spirituality, or just all the other things that go on in life, the fun and leisure activity. What I want you to do now, in item number 1 on the sheet that I hope you printed out, is just write briefly, in just 2 or 3 words, your most important goal right now as we sit here tonight. And that shouldn't take anybody very long. Let me just spend a minute defining the various things we're going to talk about tonight. The first is your goal. We've already talked about the fact that your goal is the biggie. That's the thing you want to accomplish. That's the same for most people. In a general way, it's manage my MS symptoms. But now what you got to do is think about what your plan is. Where do you need the work? What did you write down as your goal? Was it exercise or diet? How are you going to get there? That's what we're going to discuss in the next section. And the third definition that I just want to give you briefly, I'm not going to dwell on it tonight, but I believe that it's important for all of us to be mindful. That is, just focused on the present. for just a few minutes every day. This doesn't have to be something you do all day long, but just think about your focus 2 or 3 minutes, maybe once or twice a day, to sort of be in the now. I'm going to discuss basically the P.A.U.S.E system, which is a system I developed that is an acronym, and all of these initials stand for something that we're going to discuss. Plan your strategy, that's the P. Account for changes, that's the A. Understand your barriers. Slow your pace and exercise your options. I think if you look at this system and follow this through, you're going to be able to be much better at achieving your goals. So here goes. Let's start with the P, plan your strategy. There's tremendous power in planning, and most of us don't plan. Most of us go through each day, one day at a time, not really thinking much about what that plan is that day. But the fact is, if we make large plans or goals, they produce a lot of anxiety in our brain. If you decide you're going to run the New York City Marathon next year, that's going to make you fearful and anxious about it, and you're not going to accomplish it. What I want you to try to do tonight is work on tricking your brain. That is, make a very small, very simple plan that's safe, something that you think you can accomplish tomorrow or the next day. Because all of our brains are really programmed to resist big changes. Our brains don't like big change. And the fact is that every time we introduce a big major change to our brain, it resists. So what I want you to think about tonight is taking small steps in order to bypass the anxiety or that fight or flight response, which I'm sure you've all heard of, that response that causes anxiety in all of us, and try to create some new connections in your brain so that your brain works with you in that little process of change. So the second part of your sheet involves making a little plan, and I mean little. Think small on this one. On number 2 on your sheet, first of all, restate your goal. What was your goal in number 1? Maybe it was exercise, maybe it was diet. Write that down again. And then under that, think about the first small plan for change toward your goal. And it can be very small. But write down something you can do tomorrow to make that change. For instance, one of the things I do every day in being mindful is I think about what is my exercise plan for today. And I outline it very carefully in my mind. It just takes me 20 seconds to think about, well, here are the 3 things I do. I either ride my bike, I take a walk, or I run. So I think about, okay, it's Tuesday, I ride my bike. I keep that in my mind. That's my little plan. So write your little plan down in number 2. It should be no more than a sentence. I like quotes sometimes, and I think this one from Woody Allen is probably one some of you have heard of already. 90% of success is showing up. Haven't you found that to be true in your life? That when we stop showing up, we don't succeed. And I think there's a lot of value in understanding that just showing up and doing the thing you tried to do yesterday, even if you weren't totally successful, is going to be useful for you in creating success. Now we move on to the A in the P.A.U.S.E system. This is account for changes. And I'm really big on this because I know full well that when we don't monitor ourselves, when we don't write things down, we tend not to succeed. So I want to encourage you to pick some kind of a method to monitor yourself in whatever area you selected. And we're going to talk about ways to do that. Find things that are more likely to change. What it does is it makes you more aware of the small changes that you make. So if we go back again to the idea of looking at your plan, I want you to think about how you will account for changes. Now let's give an example. Perhaps you decided to take a longer walk each day. That seems like a reasonable kind of a plan. Well, you could write a journal about that. There's a way that you could do a journaling procedure for yourself. Maybe you can make a behavior log. You know, another great way that's very cheap to do this, if you're a walker at all, or if you move around very much at all outside of a wheelchair, you might want to buy a very inexpensive pedometer. You can buy a pedometer at Target or Walmart for 10 bucks that measures how much you move every day, number of steps you take. A nice way to do that would be every day at the end of the day, look at your pedometer and simply record the number of steps you took. That's very useful. Maybe some of you have smart devices. I know on my iPhone I have a really nice Nike app that is a pedometer that records the number of steps I take kind of automatically. Maybe you want to develop a computer program. Some people really like to work in Excel and things like that. There are a lot of good ways to do that. There's also a really nice device on the market. I'm not an owner of the company, but it's called a Fitbit, which is spelled Fitbit.com is their website. This is a device that costs under $100 that is very small, and you can clip it on any part of your body and move around all day long. At the end of the day, it records exactly how many steps you've taken, how much you've moved during the day. Write that down. The important thing is keeping a log so you know the weeks you do better, what you did right. So I'm going to ask you now, what's your method going to be of tracking your changes? How are you going to know when your changes take effect? Go ahead and write down the method right now. Maybe it's journaling. Maybe it's a behavior log about number of minutes you've worked out each day. Maybe it's a smart device, Fitbit, computer program. Just take a moment to write that down. The U is understand your barriers. Understanding your barriers really dissolves to 4 different areas. One is external barriers, things that occur outside of us. Another is internal barriers. Another is called brain chatter. And the last one is called time traps. So let's go through each of those one at a time. External barriers. Some people don't have any training in how to make a plan. They go through life not understanding planning, and hopefully that's what you're going to go away with tonight, is a way to develop a plan. Life changes. Let's face it, when you lose a loved one in your family, when you undergo a divorce, when you lose employment, those are big changes that can be real big external barriers that don't help us to get back on track very well. Maybe you disagree with the goal setter. You know, there's a lot of people who have goals that were set by other people, their doctor, their spouse, other people in their life. Or maybe you've had negative feedback from other people. Maybe people have told you, oh, you've tried to exercise 100 times, you've never been successful, you won't this time. That's negative feedback. So for item number 4A, write down what are your, if you have any, what are your external barriers? For B, internal barriers. Some people don't have any plans. A lot of people wake up every morning and think, well, today's just going to be like yesterday. I don't need to plan anything. You got to plan. What interferes are long-established behaviors or resistance to change, fear of the new, sort of that idea that you can't teach an old dog new tricks. I've never been an exerciser, I won't now. And certainly, I think a lot of you know that psychological distress can influence this. If you've suffered from depression or long-term anxiety, you know full well that on a day when you're feeling really depressed, the last thing you want to think about is getting the energy to exercise. It's very difficult to do that. What are your internal barriers? Try to write that down now. Abraham Lincoln said one thing that I've always thought was kind of great. Old Abe said, most folks are about as happy as they make up their minds to be. And you know, that's very, very true, that a lot of people decide to be unhappy. They decide not to accept what's good in their day. And I think this is important for this next area, which is what I call brain chatter. Brain chatter is all that stuff that goes on in our head every day when you wake up in the morning or maybe in the middle of the night and you start to rehash the past, to think about old things that have happened, maybe a bad divorce, maybe losing a job, maybe the threat of unemployment. Those are all things that you can think about. All or nothing thinking. This is classic for people who are dieters. I'm either on my diet and I'm doing really well, or I fell off it, I'm doing miserably. I either got all my exercise in today, or I only got a little bit, therefore I failed. Don't forget, every bit counts. And I think, as Sue will also tell you later, exercise is sort of cumulative, so don't worry too much if that's the issue. Disqualifying the positive. Maybe you've had a great day and you've accomplished almost every plan that you set out to do, but you missed one thing. One thing during the day out of the 50 things you did, but what do you remember the next day? Only that negative thing. We tend to forget about and disqualify all the good things that we've done every day. Labeling is about putting a label on ourselves or other people. Here's a great example. I've never been a good exerciser. I'm a couch potato. Couch potatoes, if you say that enough to yourself, you're going to become a couch potato. No question about it. And the last one is misfortune telling. Misfortune telling is sort of the opposite of rehashing the past. What we do when we chatter about misfortunes is think about the future rather than the past. What is going to happen? Usually our misfortune telling statements start with what if. What if my MS gets worse? What if I can't exercise next year? What if I get a divorce? All those different things can happen and interfere with our lives. And that's a really big one. I think sometimes that misfortune telling is really the seat of all kinds of anxiety. Now in 4C, write down what your particular brain chatter is. I'm sure you can all identify with one of these. And as you're doing that, I will tell you one thing Oprah said that I like. Breathe, let go, and remind yourself that this very moment is the only one you know you have for sure. Now, isn't that true? Don't we spend a lot of time out of that moment right now? We spend time thinking about things in the past, things in the future that slow us down and end up being barriers in our lives. So let's talk last about time traps. Time traps are basically ways that we use excuses about time not to do things. And I think the most reasonable excuse that most of us think for not exercising is, I didn't have the time. I couldn't fit it into my day. Because we all feel like we're living in the fast lane a lot of the time. We have no time for the present moment, and that's the most important thing. It's sort of like being on automatic pilot. You know, we live a lot of our lives on automatic pilot when we're really not thinking about time or where we are. I don't know if you've ever driven down a freeway, perhaps in your town, where you've gone a very long distance, and you realize when you get to your destination, you didn't even realize what you passed. You didn't see anything along the side of the road. Because we're on automatic pilot a lot of the time. We spend a great deal of time that way. So here's your homework. We're not going to do this tonight. I've written down ways to cope with the barriers. I want you to think about how you're going to overcome the external, internal, brain chatter, and time traps in your lives. So that can be something you leave blank for now and deal with later. Now we move to the S. And I'm a real big believer in this. Slowing your pace down. Use relaxation. I don't know how many of you out there have learned any kind of relaxation techniques. I'm a big fan of things like progressive muscle relaxation, where you simply tighten and let go of different muscles in your body if it's comfortable for you. Using imagery, using breathing exercises. There are so many very simple. I use a circular breathing exercise with a lot of my patients, where I simply have them breathe in through their nose, hold the breath for a second or two at the top, and breathe out through their mouth. And if they do that 5 or 10 times and bring their breath down a little bit to their abdomen, they find they're more relaxed and they're able to be more mindful. Being mindful is part of this whole process, because you've got to find an anchor in the present. I'll tell you my anchor. When I relax 2 times a day and get mindful about my plans, I simply touch my thumb and my index finger lightly together when I'm thinking about the things I can control. Here are mine. I have a terrible time getting overly hungry at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So I know that I need to have a planned snack. If I don't have a plan at 3 o'clock and bring a snack along to work, I'm going to come home at 6 o'clock and empty the refrigerator. So that's one thing I know I can control. The other thing, my other simple plan each day is, what am I going to do for exercise today? What is my ritual going to be? And we're going to talk about rituals in a minute. So how do you get rid of brain chatter and time traps? Every day, I would suggest to all of you, you just take 2 minutes, 3 minutes to close your eyes, take a couple of nice slow breaths, and try to be present. Be in the present. Try to stay in the moment and reaffirm for just a minute or two your plans. Find your anchor, whatever yours is. I told you mine's my thumb and my index finger, and just visualize achievement. And I've already told you about my simple plans, but the way I do it is, in the morning when I'm taking a shower, I think about, what am I going to do that day? What's my planned snack today? What's my exercise? In the evening when I'm brushing my teeth, I think about, did I succeed? Did I get that done okay? That's important. The last is simple. Exercise your options. Where do you want to start? Well, you've already identified on number 1 what area of your life you think you need to start in. And I hope for many of you it's exercise. When do you want to start? This is where it gets tough. It's real easy to say, I'm going to start to work out next month. But it's another thing to say, at 10 o'clock next Tuesday, I'm going to call my friend Susie and we're going to take a 30-minute walk. Make it exact. What's your specific plan? What I will do, take a 30-minute walk. And lastly, how are you going to track your progress? Folks, it can be an index card. It doesn't have to be anything real fancy, but try to figure out a way to track your progress. So how do you get motivation? You got to do something. Don't wait for motivation to occur. Behavior change causes motivation. So if you sit on the couch and wait for motivation, you're not going to be able to get it. You've got to start to do something a little different. It's like that old saying about how you eat an elephant, small and simple, one bite at a time. Make a ritual out of your exercise. Please think about your exercise as something you don't have a choice about. None of us do. I know the value, the healing value of a little bit of physical exercise. Whatever your limits are in our lives, try to do that and make realistic and measurable short-term goals. So I've given you more homework. Number 5 on your sheet is what's your new plan. Starting on Tuesday, February 1st at 10 in the morning, I will fill in the blank. What barriers am I going to hit? How am I going to cope with them? And lastly, again, how am I going to track my daily progress? I want to leave you just with a couple of attitudes that I think are very important in all of this. Healthy attitudes. There's so much research that shows that self-efficacy is important. That is the knowledge that we're going to be able to accomplish the things we think we want to. Secondly is optimism. Tremendous amount of research on people who are optimistic, and the fact that some people who are not optimistic can learn to be more optimistic seem to stay healthy and lead healthier lives. Forgiveness is sort of the opposite of anger. It's important to forgive people sometimes. You know, anger, it turns out, is probably the most deadly emotion for our physical health of any emotion we have. So try to think about forgiveness. Sense of humor, I think, is very important. Whether it's laughing about yourself or laughing about other people, humor is always important. And lastly, develop a sense of purpose. Know what you are getting up for every day. It doesn't have to be big. You don't have to be the president. You just have to be somebody who develops a sense of purpose. So that's very important. I want to thank you very much for paying attention, and I'll be glad to take questions after Sue is finished with her presentation. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. This is Sue Kushner, and I'll be continuing with the exercise portion of mine and Dave's evening spent with you. And what I want to emphasize to everybody is that exercise is and needs to be individualized for you. Let me just try and get these slides advanced. I'm sorry about that. Okay. So our attitude as PTs and healthcare professionals, including Dave and the Can Do MS Center, is that exercise is achievable for everybody. We can meet you where you are. The key to success of any exercise program is to be consistent. And keep in mind that if an exercise program works for you, that means it works. It may not be the same as the person next to you in the support group or your neighbor or someone at church, but what works for you is going to be successful for you. I'm going to kind of fly through these next few slides on the benefits of exercise related to MS. I think that most everybody knows that the benefits are numerous. There's a lot of bench science research and clinical research going on that shows that possibly lesions can be prevented or repaired or altered in existing lesions. Certainly exercise has been shown to assist with improving functional levels of activity and activities of daily living. It's being investigated in many parts of the country if exercise can modify the course of the disease. There's also numerous studies that show that exercise may assist with the cognitive processes related to MS. I think everybody knows that exercise can make you feel better, and there are physiological reasons, endorphins that are released. There may be some neuroplasticity in patients with MS that can show improvement through exercise. Years ago, several studies showed that exercise can help reduce depression and anger related to MS. It certainly can improve in social interactions, emotional behavior, time management, home management, and in general makes you feel better about yourself. Like Dave, I like to throw in usually a lot of humorous slides, but we'll keep it to one. Gentleman saying, or the wife saying that he needs more activity. This is not what we're talking about. But I do want to talk about some specifics related to exercise. The next few slides I'm going to go through briefly about the Surgeon General's report of why exercise is important for everybody. One main thing to keep in mind is that exercise need not be strenuous to achieve benefits. A lot of people think, well, I'm in a wheelchair or I can't walk fast enough to get my heart rate up. I may as well not exercise because how is that going to benefit me? Well, I'm here to state that it can benefit you, and I will talk about some ways in which you are still able to exercise. Always keep in mind that previously sedentary people should receive medical clearance prior to exercise. That's for anybody with MS, anybody without MS. Certainly people with disabilities are less likely to engage in moderate physical activity, but the needs for you to engage in exercise are the same as everybody else. It's also been shown that social support from friends and family have been consistently and positively related to continuing with physical activity. Also included are just the general benefits of exercise with decreased coronary heart disease, decreased high blood pressure, diabetes, colon cancer, the things that you would, that would benefit anybody. Keep in mind that just because you have MS, that doesn't mean that you have a what I call get out of jail free card. Doesn't mean that you're not going to get all the other aging problems that accompany everybody's life, and it does not make you exempt from your basic lifestyle diseases. So your situation may be compromised due to the MS, but you've got all the other things to worry about also. When we're thinking about exercise and trying to get people motivated to exercise or stay within the program of exercise that they have or modify what they are doing, I really like to talk to people about what do you like to do. Granted, if you hate it, you're not going to be doing it day in and day out. Think about what did you like to do, and can that be modified to some extent? Also, what is realistic? As Dave mentioned, if you say you want to run a marathon and you've never been a runner and you have some foot drop, chances are running a marathon is not in the realm of being realistic, but we can find things that are. How do you like to work out? I saw a few people type in that they like to go to a gym. They get motivated and energized by other people. Dave spoke about this also. Other people get their motivation from within. It's all intrinsic. They like to work out in the privacy of their home. They don't want to have to buy any equipment. They don't want to have to look good. They just want to do it on their own. So you really need to figure out what works best for you. Do you like a gym atmosphere? Do you like going to a swimming pool? Do you have enough inexpensive equipment and space that you can do what you need to do at home? Do you like to spend time with a really good friend or your spouse? And can you incorporate that into your physical activity program? My best friend locally moved to Dallas years ago. We used to walk every Saturday morning. I was really bummed when she was moving, so we thought, hey, you know what, let's just talk on the phone for the same hour every Saturday morning. We catch up, and, there goes an hour. Also, you need to think about, do you like to make up your own program and kind of recreate every day or every week what you're going to do? Or do you like to just turn your brain off, go into a class, and follow somebody? And keep in mind, what you like to do may easily change over time. I used to be an independent exerciser. As I've gotten older and have other stressors in my life, I really like to take classes. I just, again, can do that. Turn the brain off, follow somebody sort of thing. Other things that you do want to keep in mind, I really like to emphasize to everybody to vary your activities. It can help you prevent getting bored. It can also help prevent overuse injuries. If you're doing the same activity 3, 4, 5 times a week, 52 weeks a year, you may run the risk of overuse injuries, some tendinitis, or just burning out. So therefore, cross-training is best. Also keep in mind that doing something is better than nothing, because nothing equals nothing. You may want to break your exercise up into small increments during the day if needed. If you don't have the time or the energy to do 30 or 40 minutes at a clip, you can do 10 minutes 2 to 3 to 4 times per day, 10 in the morning, 10 at lunch, 10 in the late afternoon or evening. I do really emphasize to everybody that you need to consult a physical therapist, a trainer, OT, whatever your person of choice is going to be to help you, but it should be somebody that knows MS. And the reason I say that is we don't have any special bag of tricks or any special techniques that we use related to MS, but knowing the disease helps us to help you in the best possible way. We know the nuances of the disease, the intricacies of exacerbations and remissions, a possible infection or good days versus bad days, how certain medications may help improve your ability to work out. It is so important to consult a PT or somebody that knows the disease. And you ask, how do you find that out? The best bet is to contact your local National Multiple Sclerosis Society. They have data banks that can lead you to the appropriate person. I also emphasize to people, talk to somebody at your support group, talk to somebody at the physician's office, but it is so important for helping to get you a good exercise program. Other factors to consider is think you're training for the game of life. You are in this for the long run, and you want to make the best of each and every day. Also think about what time of day works best for you, morning, late afternoon, evenings. A lot of people just like to get one shower, hair, and makeup, females, guys, whoever. So mornings might be best for you, or in the evening, and then you can just get your shower and go to bed. Keep in mind, too, that it doesn't always have to be structured exercise activity. You can do some dancing. You can do the Wii. You may have a Wii, or your kids, grandkids, house cleaning, coaching, some walking at work. But do keep in mind to stay heart healthy or cardiovascular fitness, you do need to get the heart rate up for 20 to 30 minutes or so several times per week. What we like to say at the Can Do MS programs is no pain, no gain equals no brain. We do not want you pushing yourselves to the point that you are so wiped out or in such pain that you can't move a muscle a few hours later or the next day. You want to go within, moderate amounts of activity. I already mentioned how important it is to consult a PT or trainer that knows the progression of the disease. We may need to update your program from time to time based on how well you're doing. As I mentioned before, exacerbations, infections, medications can have a tremendous effect on the disease also. And with MS, this is one time you want this to be all about you. You are the central commander of your program. You are the cog in this wheel. So you need to really call the shots. You need to be the squeaky wheel that gets oiled where your health care is concerned. We're all there to help you, including your support partners, but we can't do it for you. You need to do it. You need to be dedicated. But you also need to let people that you're working out with, your PT, your physician, you need to give them feedback about how the program is going for you, and modifications that we may need to make for you can then be done. So I want to talk a little bit about specifics. Certainly I'm not the PT that's going to be working with you day in or day out or several times a week, but I do want to give you some general guidelines. Again, it needs to be a custom program that is fit for you after an evaluation, not only from your physician but by the PT and other healthcare professionals. And again, it will be an ongoing process. We talk about folks with MS kind of like being a boomerang or coming through a revolving door into the PT clinic. We may see you a couple weeks at a time. We may not see you for 6 months or a year, but we may be seeing you again and again throughout a long period of time. Again, some specifics that I really like to emphasize in anybody's exercise program are 4 main areas: aerobic activity, flexibility, balance and coordination activities, and strengthening activities. Aerobic activities, as I mentioned before, are really essential to being healthy heart-wise. Having a good cardiovascular program is going to help you burn calories and stay heart healthy. It can also very much assist with weight control, burning calories, help decrease percentage of body fat, get more lean muscle mass. Also, just the feel-good thing, the endorphins, that's a scientific fact. You should feel better after exercising. Also can be a tremendous social outlet. Again, you need to find what works for you, and I have a list of some suggestions there. And you may not be ambulatory at this point, but there are many, many other ways that you can get physical activity and get your heart rate up and keep it up 10 to 20, 30, 40 minutes, 3 to 4 times per week. And these are some of the areas in which you can do it. There's also so many modified programs for people with MS that can be found through DVDs. There are some television channels that have exercise programs to follow, and even ones that are modified for persons with various disabilities. In my area, which is the Pittsburgh area, we have a wonderful National MS Society. They have some programs going on in different parts of the city throughout the year. Yoga, they will sponsor some aquatic programs. What I want to say briefly about aquatics is you do not have to be a great swimmer. You don't even have to be a swimmer to enjoy the benefits of aquatic exercises. Just going in and walking briskly, putting maybe a jogging vest on where you can float, or using those noodles that you get, Walmart or Target for a couple bucks, and going in the deeper part of the water and jogging. The aquatic programs are wonderful with folks with MS. Long time ago, I treated somebody who was non-ambulatory, could not walk around her house, but she said, oh, if only I could live in 3 feet of water, I would be able to walk all around my house, all around my job. So water is wonderful as long as it's not too warm. When it's a nice cool temperature, it can also keep your core body temperature cooled for several hours after you come out of the water. Again, receive medical clearance. Aerobic activity is recommended 3 to 4 times a week. The time frames that I mentioned are up here also. Keep in mind, do not wipe yourself out with any exercises. Make sure that you feel as good 2 hours after as before you started. And listen to your body. If you're fatigued from an exacerbation, from a urinary tract infection, from travel, from a very busy weekend, listen to your body and take some time off, a day or two. Flexibility or stretching. This is one area that I emphasize to be done daily. This can be simple bed exercises, chair exercises, wheelchair stretches, yoga or Pilates stretches. You want to focus on tight areas that have been identified by the physical therapist, but again engage in overall body stretching. It is so wonderful helping to prevent injuries and just makes you feel good. I saw a few people put comments up that they're not able to do much by themselves, and the stretching is something that you may need somebody to help you with. Support partner, a volunteer from the MS Society or your church, someone to come in several times a week and assist with you. I teach in a physical therapy program. Sometimes our students are looking for volunteer activities to do, and calling a local PT program may find you the person that you need to help with. Also, working on flexibility can greatly improve posture. I always like to mention, keep in mind if you're doing any of these stretches standing or sitting, to be very cautious of your balance. You don't want to cause yourself an injury while you're trying to help yourself. As mentioned before, mat stretches that can be done in bed, yoga, Pilates. There are stretches for wheelchairs, activities, and just keeping the body stretched can really help alleviate pain, especially discomfort that comes from poor posture, say in a wheelchair, or walking improperly. You may get a really tight back or a tight knee from walking funny, basically. I like to mention the area of balance and coordination. It's very important. You want to always decrease your risk of falling. Again, you may be going along nicely with your new and improved exercise program. It's not going to help you if you have a fall, you break something, you might need pins, plates, surgery, casts, rehab. I'm giving the worst case scenario here, but you want to be so cautious where your balance and coordination is concerned. It's really important, again, for a PT or somebody to identify why you may be having the problems with balance and coordination. Is it from a muscle imbalance? Is it from muscle weakness? You may be perfectly strong overall, and you may have sensory problems on the bottom of your feet, and you just can't tell where your feet are in space, and that may be likely to make you fall or lose your balance. You have to think about your vision. Is that causing you some balance and coordination problems? So the problem of why you're having troubles in this area must be identified. Fighting with your balance and coordination all day, day in and day out, can really add to your fatigue and wasted energy. So it's another reason you want to pay attention to this area. Again, finding what works best for you along with the help of a PT. land exercises, water exercises, sitting activities. The Swiss ball, a big physiotherapy ball, is wonderful for balance and coordination activities. PT clinics have a lot of really neat equipment, not always stuff that you can take home with you, but there's enough things that a physical therapist can give you or give you ideas of what to do at home. I like people to look for very inexpensive equipment to use at home. Maybe a Swiss ball would cost $20 along with a couple DVDs. We don't like to emphasize or encourage anybody to buy expensive equipment unless you know for sure you're going to use it. How many fancy bikes and treadmills are out there in this country that are great for hanging your clothes on to dry, and that's what ends up happening much of the time. Strengthening. I definitely emphasize this area also. You want to do some sort of strengthening and resistive exercises with either a TheraBand, like a resistive band, free weights, machines at the gym. Again, you need the PT to accurately identify what is weak and why is it weak. Is it weak due to the MS, due to neurotransmission problem? Or is it weak like any old weak, lazy muscle? Are you just a couch potato, always have been, and the MS may be the first time in your life you are becoming an exerciser. And I have seen that happen more than once, and in fact, I think somebody typed in tonight that with the MS diagnosis, he started exercising, lost 40 pounds for the first time in his life. So it has been a life changer at times for the better. So again, keeping in mind an overall strengthening program in addition to specific strengthening exercises. And I mentioned the different types of strengthening apparatus that can be used. Again, very inexpensive, easy to use in a gym atmosphere, a class atmosphere, or in the privacy of your own home. Again, I am not going to be the physical therapist working with you. I would love to be, but I do wish you well and hope that you can find somebody out there that really works well with you and for you. If you're not happy with who you're with, keep searching. It's so important, just like finding a good psychologist, a good support group, a good physician. Any exercise program must be tailored to meet your needs. Again, this is all about you. And you be the squeaky wheel, you be the cog in your wheel. Keep in mind, too, that your needs are likely to change from time to time. Listen to your body. And you are Charles in charge here. Also, this is pretty much just common sense, and it goes with some things that Dave mentioned. You're more likely to stick with a program if it fits your daily life and your goals and your interests. Find some way, like Dave gave you a lot of suggestions for keeping on track. Writing things down works very, very well for a lot of people. Keep it fun. And keep in mind, you're just exercising today, just for today. You don't have to think, oh my gosh, I have to exercise, I never really did calculate the number, say 10,000 more times in my lifetime. Just today. That's all you need to do it for. And in fact, you may even be able to take tomorrow off if you've done exercise 2 or 3 days in a row. And keep your eye on your goals. Hopefully your goals are to be as healthy as possible, combat the disease, and have a very healthy, productive lifestyle. So I will conclude it there, and then I will turn things over to Melanie with specific questions or comments for Dave and myself. And thank you all for joining us from all over the country tonight.
Great. Thank you so much, Sue and Dave. We do have some great questions from everyone this evening. I have someone who's asking about the pain barrier, how to get motivated again when you're missing days due to pain or to a relapse. Do you have suggestions for remotivating?
I do. I'll say a few things and then let Dave chime in. Where pain is involved, it it needs to be very accurately identified why you are having the pain. There may be neuropathic pain due to the MS. That may be treatable with some medications. It may be orthopedic pain, very poor posture in a wheelchair, or an assistive device or a brace that may be ill-fitted, improperly fitted. So you need to identify the source of the pain, treat the source of the pain, and then revamp or restart the exercise program.
Yeah, the only thing I would add, Sue, for anybody who's got pain, once you get to the source of it and figure out what it is, I think it's most important to start at your very baseline level and build your activity very, very slowly. I've worked a lot with pain patients where that really does work, and a lot of people kind of overdo it at first. So try to keep it slow and easy.
Yes.
Great. Thank you to both of you. Another question is regarding short bits of exercise and longer sustained periods. Are they both beneficial?
They are. Like I said earlier in one of the slides, something is better than nothing. And if you do 3 bouts of exercise, 10 minutes each throughout the day, boom, you have the equivalent of 30 minutes of one exercise program in your day there.
Yeah, I always like to add a little quote that I can't take credit for, but I heard a speaker, a very big expert on exercise, who said that exercise is like loose change. It accumulates in your pocket. And I think that's just in line with what Sue is saying. A little bit is always good. So don't discount it if you can't get the full amount in.
Thank you. Another question that I have is for someone who is in a wheelchair or maybe very limited with their mobility, what are some basic suggestions for cardio exercise or getting your heart rate up? This person was asking, besides swimming, if there are other suggested activities.
Yes, if you're able to use the arms, you can get a pretty good cardiovascular workout going with your arms. There's something called an arm restorator. It's like little bicycle pedals. You can place it on a table. They're very inexpensive, and you can it's like an arm crank. You can crank the arms and go for 10 or 15 minutes, and that can really get your heart rate up. You can possibly get on a rowing machine. Some people have these at home. They're pretty easy to find in most gym atmospheres. Rowing machines can be a very, very good workout. There are bicycles. There's one called the Schwinn Airdyne. It's a stationary bike. You can sit on it. It uses arm cranks. The arms go and the legs go. And it has a built-in fan that blows some nice cool air on you so you don't get overheated. Those are just 3 suggestions for ways to get cardiovascular exercise without needing to get up and walk quickly or run or be on a road type of bicycle.
Great, thank you. Another question that I have is, this is from a support partner, wondering about approaching obviously using the motivation techniques, but approaching the motivation exercises or techniques with a spouse.
Well, let me go first. It depends. If that spouse is not on tonight, then I would definitely have them review the archive of this seminar just to kind of get caught up on the methods. But basically the motivational methods that we talked about tonight work with anybody. And they can actually motivate the support partner to help the spouse or partner get motivated in themselves. So I would really encourage you to have them listen to it later on if they're not on tonight.
I would also add, if there's something that the 2 of you like to do and can do together, you can feed off of each other. That can be some excellent quality time spent with each other versus sitting side by side on the couch with a bowl of potato chips in between you watching Everybody Loves Raymond reruns. You can get a lot more benefit from doing an activity that you both like to do.
Yeah, I would just go back to the example of, identified motivation. Remember I talked about that. Identified motivation is when you're doing something with somebody else that you know and like. And that really has a very powerful effect. So I totally agree with Sue.
Thank you. I think we can get one or two more questions in here. I've had a few people ask about the strong side versus the weak side. How should both sides be exercised? How suggestions to maybe overcome the compensation for that?
Okay, yeah, I mean, definitely exercising both sides. You know, you want to think about exercise certainly as overall body exercise. Once the weak side has been identified as weak, you may, depending on what your PT and physician find, you may need to do less weights or less repetitions, less whatever on the weaker side, even though in general it's the side that needs more, more strengthening. But it may not be able to tolerate the same amount of weight, the same amount of repetitions or frequency as the stronger side. But certainly both, any weak area needs to be worked, any strong area needs to have the strength maintained or even improved on that side also.
Great, thank you. One last question. Sue, I know that you touched on finding a personal trainer that specializes in individuals with MS. Do you know of an association or a group, maybe beyond the National MS Society or just talking with your physician, or is there another suggestion that you may have?
I don't know if the American College, ACSM, American College of Sports Medicine, has a data bank for trainers that specialize in any sort of disability. A lot of times local YMCAs may have somebody on board. Calling local health clubs and asking around. There is a National Association of Trainers, I think it's NATA, again, that may have like a little special interest group or subdivision that you may be able to find someone specialized through them. But I really like to guide people towards the National MS Society in your local area, because they usually have an excellent database available for individuals.
Great. I think that's about all the time that we have for questions. First off, I'd like to thank you, Dave and Sue, for being tonight's presenters, and thanks also to everyone who joined us this evening on the webinar. And we'd like to take a moment to announce the winner of our fall webinar book giveaway. Congratulations to Joyce of Antioch, Illinois, who has received her copy of our new book, The Can-Do Multiple Sclerosis Guide to Lifestyle Empowerment. And this book was co-authored by several Can-Do MS programs consultants, including Dave and Sue, who were our presenters this evening. It was edited by Pat Kennedy, a registered nurse and nurse practitioner who is our nurse educator and a longtime programs consultant with our Can-Do MS staff. And if you'd like to see reviews or purchase a copy of the book online, please visit our website, mscando.org, and there's more info on the book, and that's listed under the Programs tab. And the next monthly webinar will be on February the 12th at the exact same time, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, and the topic is Support for the Partner, a special webinar on support partner concerns and needs. Our special presenter that evening will be Dr. David Rentel, psychologist. So please join us live from the convenience of your home or office at no charge to you. You can register for the Can-Do MS webinars at mscando.org under Programs. And for those of you participating live this evening, once the presentation is over, you will see a survey appear on your computer screen. Please take a moment to complete the survey and help us continue to improve our webinars. We value your feedback and input. And you will also receive a copy of tonight's webinar slides by email. Thanks, everyone, and have a great night.